Hello and welcome to a new show of COI at Work. And from the studio, I've literally come in the middle of the sea to really understand if India is growing, what are the factors which are at play. We are with the chairman of JNPA, which is Sanjay Sethi, to talk about the logistics, the port, the good work JNPA is doing, and how exactly things are shaping up in this dynamic global environment. Thank you for inviting us over. It's a lovely setting. So first tell our viewers, where are we and what should we expect as you give us a tour of this lovely facility, of the lovely port?
So this is a part of our quay as in the shore where the vessels come, and as you can see that we have vessels over here, which is one of the terminals of JNPA, and JNPA has 5 such terminals. So this one has about a kilometer of quay where you are right now standing, and that is where the loading and unloading is going on.
The general view post-COVID was that there was congestion at all major ports. Demand is more, congestion is there. COVID in a sense really had an impact on supply chains. How much of that is myth? How much of that is reality?
There was definitely a time, but strictly speaking, it was about a quarter of 2020. After that, for us in terms of the numbers, there has been no real impact. And in terms of the disruptions in the supply chain which were happening all over the world, there were some changes, but in terms of the growth, after that, there has been a steady growth in JNPA.
Port traffic is always the benchmark to understand which way economy is moving. It's like a canary in a coal mine, the harbinger of economic activity. I was looking at the data point for the aggregate port traffic, and for the month of November, there is a decline in exports and imports have been subdued. Is this an indicator of things slowing down because of the global challenges?
Only for JNPA, these figures are not the same, because we've seen an increase of 8% and 10% in terms of TEUs and tonnage. However, you're right, in terms of the overall national traffic, there has been some change which November is showing.
But what you're telling us is important, that the congestion challenges, which in a sense supply chain disruptions were there, now they're getting sorted out. There is no longer that broken down supply chain.
There are 2 things about that. One is, of course, the capacities at the ports. So in terms of the capacity at JNPA, just in the last 3 years, we have gone up from 5 million TEUs to 7.5 million TEUs. And in the next coming 2 years, we go up to 10 million TEUs, which means that this port is ready to handle much more. Last year, I did about 5.7 million TEUs, so I can go up to 10 million TEUs in the next 2 years or so, which means that I have right now excess capacities, and in terms of congestion at this port, there is no issue. Similarly, the other congestion which was always talked about for JNPA was the congestion in the connectivity. So over the last few years, the kind of infrastructure projects we've done, there is a 45 kilometers highway which you might see today, an 8-lane full-fledged highway which has decreased the distance from the port to, let's say, Navi Mumbai by more than an hour and a half, which is a very, very big establishment or an achievement for the last few years.
If I stack up the data, about 60% of the total container traffic of major ports is handled by JNPA. Is there a difference in the way how the container traffic in the world is moving? Because if I look at the lay of the land, globally, apart from commodities like oil and coal, just about everything is now moving towards containerization.
You're very right. The containerized traffic in India is still lower compared to even some of the developing countries. Barring JNPA and in private sector Mundra, which handle majority of the container traffic in this country, the other ports definitely need to catch up with the containerization, and containerization in this country needs to move to various other commodities, to other ports, and also find newer ways of dealing with containers in general.
There is an impression that the port traffic in India is always congested. The ports in India are not really world class. I know the journey has been a tough and a rough one. We've come a long way. So the optimistic in would say that we were lower and we've climbed higher. But I think we still have a long, long way to go.
You've come to JNPA today. You will see for yourself. There would be 3 or 4 main verticals in which you would call any place world class. So the first should be the efficiency indicators.
Okay.
The terminals that are being handled by some of the top class world operators have the world class efficiency indicators. So let's say there's an example of moves per crane per hour. So we match the international standards. In fact, in some we are better than them. The various, as we say in management, the lean practices, so to say, there are SOPs for running each and every small thing. The second vertical is about the digitization part. So all the automation, the digitization that has happened, and it is not just in the crane operations, it's about the yard management, it's about how the traffic moves here. So all that digitization is also again definitely world class. And the third part, of course, which we are working very hard on also is the green initiative, the sustainability part, where let's say the International Maritime Organization has some standards, the SOPs, those have to be followed, the kind of fuels that are being used. But then there are a lot of other things like the share of renewables, for example. So the share of renewables, which we thought for the country, the target should be up to 60% by 2030. What we are trying to do here is that we definitely achieve it before 2025. And in this, all the terminals have come together to make sure that we are able to make this as good as the best in the world.
There's a change in narrative post-COVID. China plus one, renewed vigor in the manufacturing sector, PLI schemes. The category where government is now taking initiatives, the policy framework, all of them are pointing to specialized exports. Whether it is car, whether it is auto ancillary, whether it is electronics, whether it is machinery. Are you now feeling the vibe that things have changed and the change is for real?
There are two things there. The first part, of course, is that this opportunity, in a way, I mean, where COVID was definitely a factor, has been provided to this country, to the exporters here, to be as competitive and get that space which has been probably vacated. In the last few years, we have definitely risen to the occasion, and the way the exports increase, the kind of figures we have, shows that the government's resolve and the government's policies are showing those results. To sustain this, all the exporters in the country need to maintain that competitive edge, and this obviously requires a lot to be done.
So we are at JNPA. Where are we standing and what is the relevance of this in the overall scheme of things?
It's one of the 5 terminals that we operate at the JNPA, and we last year we handled about 5.68 million TEUs in this port, which is the highest containerized traffic that is handled in the country. And this is where all the key cranes are put, as you can see. These cranes will load and unload the containers at this place which are coming in the vessel. So at any one time now, this quay can handle 2 to 3 very large vessels or ships. And here the turnaround time is less than 24 hours, which basically means that some of these larger ones which handle anything from 18,000 to 24,000 TEUs, the import-export balance is maintained, and those many are loaded and unloaded within that time.
So in 24 hours, a ship will dock here, if that's the correct word to describe, will dock here, it will unload and then load the cargo, and it will be out of the.
So the loading and unloading is being done simultaneously. That's what I'm trying to explain. And even the handling of the containers, there is a dual lift also, and thereby so that we improve on the turnaround time. And that is how we are able to match the international standards.
How efficient is that? I mean, if you compare the 24-hour window, globally and locally, what are the efficiency levels?
No, this is one of the best in the country as well as in the world.
So in a world, if you are turning around a ship, loading and unloading in less than 24 hours, it's one of the best in the world.
That's right.
So can you explain me what exactly is going on here?
If you can see this crane, I mean, of course, these are still, there is one operator up there. Even though the whole operation is in that sense automated completely, but there is a person there. There are now automated cranes also in the world. In terms of efficiency, the jury is still out. These manually operated are slightly more efficient.
So these are the containers which are coming from the ship. They are getting unloaded here, and then they go to the yard.
You can see these tractor trailers that are standing here. So one lift basically is being done to get the container up and load it onto this tractor trailer. And so the unloading and the loading. The other one, for example, has come with a container there, and it will pick it up and is placing it in the place of the container that has been lifted from there.
The fact that you're expanding and expanding aggressively, and you are coming up with a major port in next 5 years, you are expanding at a time when the private competition is also intensifying. The smaller ports are on course to become a major port. What gives you the confidence?
In terms of JNPA and the Vadhavan port that we are developing now, the first, of course, is the locational advantage. The locational advantage basically means that where we are located, the kind of trade we attract, the kind of hinterland connectivity that we have, is the first one. The second one, of course, is that over the years, ports develop a reliability, a performance index. By the way, an NCAR related independent study puts us on the top, where all the various parameters are used, and in the top 5 or 10 there is no government port. Of course, the private ports stand a lot of advantage in a lot of those parameters, but in terms of time and cost advantages, the whole ecosystem that has been built is what probably puts up us there. But then when you ask what gives us that confidence, so it's the location, it is the kind of ecosystem that has come up over the years, and port of call is all about reliability, about performance. So that.
But if I look at all the major businesses which were controlled by the government has vacated spectrum. Telecom, airline, banks also, some would argue that private banks are now eating into market share of PSU banks. You don't see that happening in the port business?
In a way, the landlord model of port is about that.
Okay.
That when we say government has no business being in business, so basically it means that we should not be operating it ourselves. So this landlord model, basically what it does is that the best operators of the world are coming in and operating. As government, we are providing that infrastructure because probably the private companies would not come in and put that infrastructure. We have to run all other services like the marine services, the kind of connectivity services, all the kind of concession agreements that are signed. These risks and responsibility matrices are very well defined. So it is about saying that governments and businesses can come together in fruitful partnerships. So this is what exactly looks the way for the port sector.
You've achieved a lot in your tenure in terms of making some very major changes and dynamic changes. What is the next thing you want to achieve for JNPA in the next 3 years?
As I said, the first big focus is on the new port, which is the Vadavan port, where we are ready with our environment studies, the detailed engineering. So we will accordingly go in for environment clearances, and there is a Dahanu Taluka Environment Protection Authority. So we need to get their clearance. So all that work is going on. Once that gets done, we should set the ball rolling.
You were the chairman of this authority when COVID happened. What was the toughest moment for you when the lockdown actually was announced?
I think the toughest one still has to be the one where we were not able to, let's say, get manual labor, which included the drivers, the mooring staff. The villages stopped them from coming back to their villages. We actually went as far as far-flung places in UP and MP to get some drivers for us. We made them stay here. We did not stop for a single minute here. We made them, we just gave them places, we gave them food for about, I think more in fact a couple of months. So I think that was the one where everybody was scared. They had this feeling that, you know, even if some case is found, but we, at least if nothing else, we had this determined will to say that the port should not stop.
So I'm going to get into every sector in India has seen what could be called as its ignition moment. It was IT in 2000. To a large extent, it was financial services between 2010 and 2020. Could that ignition moment be there now for logistics in India? Or infrastructure?
Logistics today has become the most important part. And when we say the government has come up with a full-fledged national logistics policy, we are for the first time talking about how we can unify, how we can have unified logistics indices, how we can have digital systems, even human manpower, even the kind of connects that we have to put for logistics in all senses that we have tried to bring together. So we are trying to see that the supply chains definitely with the help of technology and digitization become much more streamlined, and ultimately we are able to achieve this single-digit logistics cost.
So if India has to grow at 6 to 7%, and if India has to become from $3 trillion to $5 trillion, do you think we have adequate and more port capacity to handle it and support it?
Port capacities for the whole country as related to the appropriate port capacities. These are two different things. Why? Because the locations matter. So let's say if this Western coast does much better today, Mundra, JNPA and the upcoming Vadavan port are probably all in this vicinity. It basically means that the connectivity to the hinterland, which are the production centers, which could be North India, which could be the places which are in Maharashtra or Gujarat, which are the big production centers in this country. So those, to that extent, the capacities have to be increased at the right places. And that is why this new port called Vadavan is coming in this place.
So when Vadavan will start in the next 5 years, phase 1, hopefully it will be up and running in the next 10 years completely.
Oh yes.
Will that be one of the biggest ports in the world?
Yes. The positioning is that it will definitely rank among the top 10 in the world.
Why is large capacity still getting created in western part of India? South or even east, large capacities are not there. They don't have major ports like a Kandla or a JNPA.
No, South has the existing ports like Chennai and Cochin, and on the eastern side we have Visakhapatnam. So these are the large ports that are there. Over the years, apart from capacities, it will be the modernization, it will be the efficiency that will count more.
When ports are growing in India, I'm sure there would be a ESG challenge. there would be a challenge in terms of how do you take care of the local population, how do you ensure that you maintain this very fine balance between environmental compulsions versus environmental clearances. How are you managing all that?
The challenge of what is typically called the Campbell triangle, where the three angles are the economy, equity, and environment.
Yeah.
You have to deal with all the conflict management or conflict minimization in a way that your cost-benefit ratio comes out well. However, when you are dealing with people, you have to be more sensitive. You need to have compensation packages. You have to have alternative sources of livelihood if you are dealing with such issues. But in case of Vardhavan, the best part is that there is no shifting of people, there is no rehabilitation, there is no resettlement. There would probably be some livelihoods in terms of fishermen being affected, but adequate compensation packages are being built about that.
Major infra sectors in India have seen a lot of foreign investment. Do you see some major changes happening in the port sector, FDI, major foreign investment? Just apart from maintaining and managing port terminals, do you see big companies coming and setting up capacities?
When we say that, right now the model that we are talking about is that in case of Vardhavan also, we will make the main infrastructure. Right now, let's say if it is 80,000 crores, 45,000 crores we will do. The rest of the 35,000 crores is expected to come from the public-private partnership, where this sector, most of the foreign companies only are investing. So here also, if you say we have mixed models where once we give them, they have to invest money to build the terminal in
so it would be PPP model which would be followed?
Yes.
I want to just perhaps draw your attention and understand in terms of managing a large port like this also means talent, HR issues. Managing modern ports is always different skill and art. How are you coping up with that?
A is that technology definitely requires that the kind of talent that we required before has changed.
Yes.
I mean, it has reduced also, but it has also changed. In a sense of Industry 4.0, if you look at that, then a lot of reskilling, for example, a lot of training. In that sense, we run one of the most important training institutes for the whole port sector.
Okay.
So we have a tie-up with the Antwerp port, which is based in Belgium. So we run this training center here in collaboration with them, and especially on the important issues like handling hazardous goods or for dredging practices. So these courses become a very important part of updating our people with that. And in terms of getting new talents, that is why a lot of outsourcing now is done, so that you can use them for specific projects, for project management purposes, for handling some contract management, for using public-private partnership issues. That's how we look at it.
The model of a port, is it a cost-plus model? How does it work?
In fact, in terms of if you're talking about ports as a generic sense, so when we are building a new port, definitely it has to be a cost-plus model. That is how we look at it. That's right.
JNPA Port over the years has followed a organic growth strategy. There are small ports in India which you can perhaps acquire, bring in an expertise, make them grow. You have the understanding of technology, connectivity. Are you thinking on those lines?
Right now, we have been given the responsibility of building such a large new port. So right now, we're focusing our energy on that.
What's next for this port now? Because all
in the next 2 years, in fact, we will have the phase 2 expansion of our 4th container terminal, which will basically mean that we would be up by another 2.5 million TEUs, almost doubling our capacity what it was about 3 to 4 years ago. which is a huge expansion for JNPA. At the same time, a lot of advancement we are talking about in technology terms for dredging purposes, for crane operations, for yard management, for parking systems, for VTMS, all our operations, we are talking about that. We have just become a landlord model port in the sense that our operations are being managed by the private terminal operators, whereby more efficiencies are being built into the system. In the coming years, we also are upgrading our connectivity, where a lot of these infrastructure projects, which we have already done, we are going one step ahead and are going to have better connectivity infrastructure.
Thank you very much for hosting us. It's just been a pleasure to visit this site.
Thank you very much, Nikunj.